stand by for further instructions.
Things were going good in Wishwell. Until they weren't. After infection started spreading, the eaters became known as Subject 118. Why? That's the test that took a shit. Dr. Church, head scientist at the Wishwell Military Research Center, disappeared after the outbreak, and the military has been looking for him ever since. Word has it, there's a massive bounty on his head. With the current state of things in Wishwell, it's important you know how to fight.
A ceasefire is to be called by staff or players if someone is injured or loses their eye protection. All players must have the following equipment: airsoft gun, eye pro, face pro, red dead rag, white dead rag, red dead light, tactical light, buffer weapon, and a speed loader. Please note that this game is mid-cap magazines only. Staff and RPS have the final say. No arguing.
If a role-playing staff has a blue light turned on, please do not target them. The blue light means they are in a part of a mission going on. This game will include airsoft replicas, as well as melee boffer weapons. Since there is a 10-foot minimum engagement distance where boffer weapons are required, each player needs a boffer weapon and a ranged weapon. Here are the weapon classifications that are allowed in Wishwell.
Class A.
A lever action or bolt action sniper rifle, a boffer weapon that is 0 to 24 inches in length.
Class B.
A pump action shotgun, where your boffer weapon is 0 to 40 inches long.
Class C.
Semi-automatic pistol, where the boffer weapon can be any size you wish. Shields. Only role-playing staff will use them. 24 inches is the max length for a Subject 118 boffer weapon.
Ranged weapons.
Pistols. 1.33 joules, 300 feet per second with 3.2 BBs. That is for HPA, gas, and AEG. Semi-automatic only, 10-foot minimum engagement. Shotguns. 1.33 joules, 300 feet per second with 3.2 BBs. That is for HPA, gas, and AEG. No semi or full auto shotguns. Pump action, lever action, or gas shell only. 10-foot minimum engagement.
Sniper rifles.
Lever action and sniper rifles. 1.55 joules, 324 feet per second with .32s. That is for HPA, gas, and AEG. Semi-automatic only. 30-foot minimum engagement. Must break the plane of a door or window on the first floor before shooting out. Please, no blind firing. Ammo will be found and traded throughout the game. Getting caught using your own ammo or ammo off the ground on the field would be considered cheating, and you will be removed from the game. Anyone can carry a sidearm. However, your primary weapon will choose your weapon class. Any weapons that do not chronograph below safety limits will not be allowed on the field. No exceptions. If you are caught tampering with the FPS after you have been chronographed and have not re-chronographed, you will be ejected from the game. All guns are chronoed by our staff using RBBs. Combat in Wishwell is different than most of you are used to.
At Wishwell, ammo is extremely limited.
All players must have a red dead rag, a white dead rag, and a red dead light.
There is no limit to the amount of melee boffer weapons you can carry as a living player, as long as your biggest weapon is the appropriate class. A Subject 118 can only use one melee or one throwable boffer weapon at first level. Throwable boffer weapons. Treat damage dealt by a throwable boffer weapon the same as a melee boffer weapon hit. You may not pick up other players' boffer weapons after they are thrown. There is no minimum engagement for throwable boffer weapons. You may use your melee boffer weapon to block throwable boffer weapons. No Nerf weapons, no Spirit Halloween weapons, no Amazon weapons. It must be an approved boffer weapon. There will be a weapons inspection before the game. If your weapon does not meet the requirements, it cannot be used, period. Do not grab an opposing player's boffer weapons with your hand or with your body. Only half power swings or thrusts. No full swings, no machine gun swinging, no blind swinging, especially through buildings. If you are in boffer combat with someone or something, keep in mind you can still be shot from a ranged combat from another player. Parlay. If during combat, when who hit is too close to call, or if an argument occurs, we ask that you just parlay. Parlay means the players involved will go their separate ways, behind cover, and either re-enter combat or walk away from the argument. We will not put up with real violence in any way. You will be ejected from the game and asked to leave the property, and possibly asked by ambush to never return. If necessary, the law will be contacted. Melee boffer weapon construction will be covered in an additional video, but there will be boffers available for sale or rent at the event.
Hit roll for ranged combat.
Living player. If a living player non-Subject 118 is hit anywhere on their person or gear, they are wounded or severely wounded. Arm and leg hits equals wounded. Chest and head hits equals severely wounded. Friendly fire counts. All hits count except for ricochets and gun hits. If hit in the gun, you are not wounded or severely wounded, but your gun is damaged and can no longer be used until it is repaired.
Subject 118s.
If a Subject 118 is hit above the waist, excluding the arms and head, they are now incapacitated. Being hit below the waist, the arms, and the head do not count.
Hit roll for melee combat.
You may not attack the head or below the belt of any player. Keep in mind, accidents happen. Don't identify as a baby.
Living player.
When a living player is hit in the arms or legs by a ranged weapon, melee boffer weapon, or throwable boffer weapon, they are considered wounded. You may not use a wounded appendage as a shield. We expect you to act wounded. For example, if hit in the leg, you should be limping around. Note, Subject 118s do not get wounded, only severely wounded or incapacitated. If a living player is hit above the waist but below the neck, excluding the arms, you are considered severely wounded and cannot do anything except call for help or return to your base after your 5-minute bleed out time.
Subject 118s.
If a Subject 118 is hit above the waist, excluding the head and arms, from a melee boffer weapon, they are incapacitated. Being hit below the waist does not count. Survival RPG is a game of honor. Do not call opposing players out. Call your own hits.
Being wounded.
When hit in this game, you are either wounded or severely wounded. You may not use a wounded body part as a shield. Note, the Subject 118s do not get wounded, only severely wounded. After you are severely wounded, yell hit or bitten and pull out the appropriate dead rag. Or if it's nighttime, turn on the appropriate dead light and make sure it's visible.
For living players.
If you are severely wounded by another living player, you would remain where hit with your red dead rag or red dead light out and wait to be healed by tourniquet or looted by the enemy. After 5 minutes of not being healed or looted, You may choose to go back to your base for respawn. If tagged, bitten by a Subject 118, while waiting, you would pull out your white dead rag, hand the Subject 118 a brain token, and begin the slow walk back to your base for respawn. This is the main way the Subject 118s score their points. There is a cure to the bite. If a living player gives you the cure before you return to your base, you will receive a replacement brain token. A severely wounded living player that has not been bitten must remain where hit, and another player may simulate dragging the wounded player to a safe area by grabbing their arm and pulling them. You may not drag players that have been bitten. If a living player is already severely wounded, waiting to be healed, and it has not yet been 5 minutes, they can still be tagged by a Subject 118. That forces you to make the slow walk back to base and give up a brain token. If a living player is wounded and not bitten, and no one can get to you to heal, and you decide to go to respawn, you must go the entire way back and cannot be healed by anyone on your travels. Returning to your base because you are bitten will require a 5-minute wait until you can re-enter play. If you are severely wounded at your faction base, you just have to wait 3 minutes before re-entry.
Severely wounded Subject 118s.
Incapacitated Subject 118s. When a Subject 118 player is hit above the waist and below the neck minus the arms by a ranged attack, they are incapacitated. An incapacitated Subject 118 may be tagged by Patient Zero to be brought to full strength. A Subject 118 can continue to crawl and attack when incapacitated. After a Subject 118 is incapacitated, they would need to be finished off in melee boffer combat to be considered severely wounded. A Subject 118, if severely wounded, has to wait at least 1 minute before returning to respawn, giving a living player a chance to loot them. A severely wounded Subject 118 must be revived by Patient Zero, return to base for immediate respawn after 1 minute loot time, or wait 5 minutes where severely wounded for respawn. A grenade hit automatically makes you severely wounded, and you must return to base for respawn. Subject 118 Evolution. During the 365th day, Subject 118s can all run and use boffer weapons. Being hit by a Subject 118 with a boffer weapon is the same as being tagged or bitten, and you are now infected. Being hit by a Subject 118 by a throwable boffer weapon would only make you wounded or severely wounded.
Dead men tell no tales.
If you are severely wounded, you may not communicate with any player in play. That includes on the radio. The only thing you are allowed to do is call for help.
Revive rule.
The revive rule is another living player must wrap a medic tourniquet strap on the arm or leg of the severely wounded living player for them to be healed. If the living player was just hit on the arm or leg from a boffer weapon, ranged weapon, or throwable boffer weapon, then a medic tourniquet can be applied to that body part by another living player, or you may do so yourself. This will give you back use of the wounded body part. One medic tourniquet strap will be issued at registration for each living player. It is your responsibility to keep it safe. We will not give out extras. If you find a medic tourniquet strap while playing, keep it. It's a bonus for you, and you may use it for extra life. You may only reissue your medic tourniquet bands by returning to your base or meeting up with a doctor. The doctor may require your services in exchange for theirs.
The cure.
The cure package comes with a syringe and a brain token. You will find this valuable item throughout the game that will cure you if you are bitten by a Subject 118. It's as simple as releasing the contents while touching the arm of the infected. Anyone can administer the cure, even yourself if you were bitten. There will also be a brain token in the cure package that goes to the cured player. Keeping the empty cure package might be a good barter tool with the RPS characters throughout the game. It does not hurt your faction if you are bitten and make the slow walk back to base to be revived, so it might be smart to use the cure for RPS if needed instead. If you use the cure for RPS, you will get to keep the extra brain token. The Subject 118s cannot be cured unless it's part of a mission for your faction to do so. Vehicles. If a vehicle is in use, it is considered disabled if caught in smoke or hit by a frag. The toolbox will be needed to repair the vehicle.
Grenades.
You must have an upgrade patch to be able to use grenades. In order to kill a player with a grenade, your grenade must discharge. Indoor rule. 15-foot kill radius for indoors. For indoors, you can use hard cover to shield yourself from the blast. Be fair, hard cover is not a net or cardboard box. Outdoor rule. To kill a player outside a building with a grenade, it must discharge BBs and hit the enemy. At Wishwell, coal burning smoke is allowed, but may not be used in buildings of any kind. Red smoke may not be used since it will be used by game staff only. Faction rule. Survival RPG is a faction-based game. You do not have to stay with your faction. However, your faction leader, who is an RPS, does have to be present for story mission completion to take score. If groups from factions want to go off searching for survival items or to find side missions, they may do so. In fact, to maximize your faction's score, splitting into smaller groups is highly recommended. Each faction will have a faction leader, which will be chosen to be in charge. It is the job of the faction leader to go over objectives with your faction and do what is necessary for your faction to win. A faction leader is considered game staff if no staff is present. Now let's talk about tokens, cards, coins, and patches. Living players will be collecting items that are needed to survive. These items will be in the form of patches. There will be food, water, ammo, medical, and upgrade patches, as well as key cards. Water patch is a primary survival item. It is common to find. The food patch is also common to find. The ammo patch can be traded for actual ammo and is rare to find. The medical patch could be used for mission objective, to trade, or for more med tourniquet bands, very hard to find. The upgrade patch, used if there is an in-game item that you have to be skilled to use. For example, not everyone can disarm a bomb, use grenades, or use night vision. The upgrade patch can be stored at your base and is worth big points. Some specific missions will say a player with an upgrade patch is needed to perform a task or complete a mission. Tools patch, needed to repair disabled weapons and for specific missions. It is uncommon to find.
Key card patches.
Certain buildings will have a color square next to the door. This means you cannot enter that building without a key card that matches that color. Simply attach the key card patch to the matching color on the patch panel, then you can enter that building through that door. You may exit the building through any door you like. Players can steal a key if you leave it on the patch panel. They are very rare to find.
Faction patches.
Your faction patch will be given to you at event registration. This represents who you are fighting for. If another player takes your faction patch, it is worth big points for their faction. All survival item patches are the property of Otherworld Productions and are not for you to keep. They must be returned at the end of the event.
Transporting survival items.
Each player will need to have room on their kit for 4 patches. 4 is the max survival items you can carry at a time, unless otherwise stated. Your faction patch has to be worn but does not take up one of those 4 slots. If you do not have or want to wear a kit to transport patches, we will have armbands available.
Banking survival items.
Each faction will have a storage crate, aka patch wall, at their base to put these supplies. Each kind of patch is worth different points when you store them. You may remove patches from your bank at any time to use in the game. However, once you do, you risk the chance of them being taken. Other factions cannot take patches from your storage crate, only from players themselves. If your survival items are not on your patch board 30 minutes prior to the game end, they will not count.
Stealing survival items, key cards, and faction patches.
If a living player is severely wounded by another living player, and that player is still in play and can get to you, they can take a survival patch of their choice as long as they have room for it. Remember, 4 items max. If they do not have room for it, they can switch one of theirs for one of yours. If you are severely wounded and have been looted, you now have to return to base and cannot be healed. This will prevent more than one player trying to loot you. A Subject 118, if severely wounded, has to wait at least 1 minute before returning to respawn, giving a living player a chance to loot. If they cannot get to you in the 3-minute wait time and you decide to go back to your base, they can no longer steal from you. You would not give your faction patch unless it's your last patch. Faction patch is worth big points for your enemies. If you are a Subject 118 and you tag a living player and that player no longer has brain tokens, they must give you a survival item of the tagged player's choice. The Subject 118 can now wear the survival patch collected and bank it at their base. If the Subject 118 gets killed before returning to their base, a living player can collect it as long as they have room for it. If you would happen to lose your faction patch to a Subject 118 or a living player, and that player has not yet returned it to their base, there is a chance you could get it back from them. You do not need to go through all the survivor items on their kit to get your faction patch back. You may never take the faction patch of a Subject 118. If you are bitten by a Subject 118 before the 3 minutes are up, you would not have to give a survival item because you would now be giving a brain token to the Subject 118 instead. A keycard patch does not count as one of your survival items. But keep in mind, if you are killed by another player, they can take the keycard. Each living player will start the game with 5 brain tokens. If you are infected by a Subject 118 in any way, you would give them a brain token. If you no longer have brain tokens, you will give up a survival item to the Subject 118. There are ways in the game that you might get more brain tokens, and you are allowed to share with your faction if you choose to do so. Survival items, gold, and other items found may also be used to barter with RPS or other factions when their services might be needed to complete a mission or you just need some other gear. Wishwell is a story-driven game, and the RPS are going to stay in character. So if you help them, they will help you. You may find gold and silver coins throughout this game. Some RPS may require gold for their help. The Night Sky faction will only help if they're getting paid.
Cards and poker chips.
You may find or be awarded exclusive poker cards and or poker chips in the game. We recommend keeping them for personal use. Best poker hand at the end of the game gets you a 3rd level up patch. Collecting all 4 poker chips may have a secret. First one to find the secret will be rewarded. These items have no point value for the game, but you may keep them as a keepsake.
Faction missions.
You will have 8 faction missions that are faction specific. Faction missions have to be completed in order. You must complete your faction missions for a chance to win the game. If your faction missions are not completed, then all points from missions and survival patches mean nothing. Absolutely nothing. Subject 118s will not have missions. However, they can steal your flag from your base. If they steal all 4 faction flags, that's big points for the Subject 118s. So protect your
Bonus missions.
Bonus missions will be given randomly from our RPS. Each bonus mission will be worth points for individual success as well as faction success. We will be using the skirmish system to keep track of bonus missions. A skirmish wristband will be needed to participate. You can rent one from Otherworld Productions or buy your own that will keep track of your personal achievements. You can also use this wristband at Otherworld Production events or any other event or field that uses the skirmish system. Renting a wristband does not show your personal achievements, only keeps track of your team achievements. This is how completing a bonus mission looks. You have to scan in with the RPS giving the objective. Then scan in when finding the objective. Then scan again with the RPS that gave the mission. Personal achievements. Throughout the event, top players on the leaderboard can win prizes, such as smoke grenades, guns, patches, etc. And also a 3rd level up patch. Leveling up. Leveling up will give you bonuses for future Wishwell events. There are a couple ways to earn that 3rd level up patch. You get a 3rd level up patch for attending the event. You also get a 3rd level up patch for winning the event. Best dressed from each faction also gets a 3rd level up patch. And best homemade boffer weapon at the events gets a 3rd level up patch. Best poker hand gets a 3rd level up patch. At the beginning of the event, if you have enough 3rd level up patches, you can trade in for your next level patch. We keep track of your patches so there is no cheating and giving buddies patches. A living player, 2nd level, would start with a face card and 2 extra ammo patches. A subject 118 at 2nd level starts with a face card and may now use dual boffer weapons.
Props.
If you get severely wounded by a living player or bitten by a subject 118, you have to drop any prop you are holding until you are healed or cured. If you are wounded, you do not have to drop the prop, but make sure you are not carrying it with your wounded body part. Props are mission specific. So if you see a prop, you cannot touch it unless you are on mission to do so.
Fence.
We will be using caution fencing as a prop in the game. You may not walk through or over this fence after it has been set up. You may not cut or rip the fence unless you are on a mission to do so. The fence will be used by factions to protect their bases.
Bases.
Each faction will have a base. Your base is where you would go to respawn, regroup, and bank survival patches. We will have a patch wall at all living player bases. Other factions can visit other factions' bases, but cannot start a fight there. No base combat except for Subject 118s. A Subject 118 can attack you at your base. If you have any questions, please direct it to our staff. Thank you all for coming. I will see you next year if you survive, and as always, call your hits.